And these have a peculiar tuning called a reentrant tuning, which you see on things like ukuleles, and essentially you don't get a bass note, a bass heavy note, because it starts with an upper string, then goes down, then goes up. So what you get is a mixed chord rather than, like if you're strumming on a guitar, you get a bass heavy chord. So it means you can have bass instruments and singers and so on, and you can just play your chords, and it's fun. A house like this would have one of these. So this is a lute, and this is not a very good lute. And I also broke the top string, so I can only play a limited, but I normally can play quite a lot more of this. So this is a top 10 hit from the 1560s called, what is it called? Packington's Pound.
What's happening with that?
Leverage.
I'm curious, so but I want to hear you play.
Yeah, no, I'll show you.
Thank you.
Now. What I want you to do is stick one arm out straight, like that, from the shoulder.
You want me to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because then you can experience it.
Okay.
Now grasp the handle.
Yep.
You can feel the weight.
Oh, yes.
Okay, let go. Now, same arm, but bend it like this. Same weight.
Oh.
Leverage.
Hey.
So,
that's interesting.
From here to here means that the same force applied here has a lot more influence here in terms of force.
Yes.
But if you do it from here to here, it has half the force. So on a lute, if the neck went straight up, the strings here are going to be up here, pulling this way. Whereas with the elbow, like we did just a moment ago, this means that all this force here is now stopped and is starting from here for the rest of the instrument. It means the lute can be much lighter than a guitar, which has to be built significantly heavier.
Fascinating. Thank you.
So an instrument like this at the time would cost as much as a house, basically.
Really? So they were for royalty?
No, or a big house like this. If you had a serious amount of money, then you might have a harpsichord, which costs the same as about 2 houses. The reason is wood. To get wood, you're standing on an absolute fortune because there's a wooden floor. To get wood, you have to dry a whole tree out. There's no machines. That can take 10 to 20 years before the wood is stable enough for you to then use it for fine woodwork like this. So every time you look around a place like this and see wood, it's screaming money at you. You just don't realise it nowadays. But in the past, to get things like this cost a fortune. It cost an absolute fortune. So like a Stirling Castle, people don't really look at the wooden panels that cover the windows, but again, they would have cost an absolute fortune, as well as the glass, as well as the lead that's in there.
Fascinating, thank you.
A more refined sound.
Yes, yes, of course.
And that tune would have been used with pleasant words as well as rude words. And it's still being used by the 1700s. These tunes had a long life, 150, 200 years.
So who wrote the lyrics for these tunes?
I don't know.
Did they have scribes or?
No. You would have had court poets. Elizabeth I had a massive culture of courtly poetry, where people would use lots of allegory and so on to describe this beautiful queen who's now in her 70s with her hair coming out and everything else.
Yeah, they want to keep their jobs, don't they?
Exactly. So here we have a harp on a harp box, and these are called psalteries, and it's like the psalm, like the hidden P. It's a Greek word basically meaning a small plucked instrument. And psalteries were ancient instruments. And then they're home entertainment. They're not to do with mixing with lots of other instruments. You can see them in different sizes. They can be across the body or flat. And if you hit them with a stick, they're called dulcimers. And nowadays, when they were rediscovered in Germany in the 1850s, they were called zithers and
Oh,
variants
that's it,
of
yes.
zithers and auto harps and all
Yes,
that.
yes, of course, of course.
So here we go.
Beautiful.
So you can imagine sitting by the fireplace, having a nice warm beer and just picking out some tunes that you like. Yeah?
Lovely.
Instrument.
Simpler life, but they all used to get their heads cut off, didn't they? So not quite so simple.
Well, no, not if you're out in the sticks.
Well,
Stay well away from the courts.
yeah, true.
Now, if you're on the streets, you don't want to carry an instrument that's worth as much as a house. So you have a simple instrument like this. Now, it may look like a recorder, but there's no holes. In fact, there's only 1, 2, 3. This is called a 3-hole pipe. And it's designed to be played with one hand. Magic. No science. Music is sound is a wave in the air, and like light and like waves on the sea, waves like to stick together with friends. And this is no exception, music's no exception. So, if I disturb the air in here, it settles down to a note, the bottom note, like that. But if I blow harder, I give it more energy and force it to jump to a new note, and it chooses a friend. Now if I do it again, we get a new friend. Without moving my fingers. So if I go from here, this is called the harmonic sequence or harmonic series, by the way. First discovered by a mathematician 2,500 years ago called Pythagoras.
Of course.
There's lots of maths in music. So if I go from here, la da 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 dum, I just need 1, 2, 3 holes. So with one hand I can play a tune like this. With the other hand I can do this.
Perfect.
No? Okay. Or I can do this. So that is, or you know the tune, but originally it was a dance called the Brawl Royale. And so this is another brawl which would have been danced here until about 1540s. This is called the washerwoman's brawl.
Beautiful.
Like that?
I love it.
Street instrument.
Yes.
In a time where there is no police and where the law is only for the rich and in a foreign language, in French, you have to trust people, but not everyone is trustworthy. So you don't want to be carrying instruments that make you a target. You want simple things that can be replaced. 2 or 3 of these, a little drum that can be worn on the belt, or perhaps an instrument like this one. So we call this a rebec, which I always think sounds like a frog, rebec. And it comes from a Middle East instrument which has the name rebab. And you can still see them in North Africa and the Middle East. And the reason this is a street instrument, not a very expensive instrument like this, is because basically it's a wooden spoon. And most of us could make a wooden spoon. It doesn't have to be a standard size. The front can just be any old piece of wood or even an animal skin. The bridge can just be a curve in a branch, and this is gut. And gut is something you'll have all around the house anyway. It holds your shoes together and things like that. And bows, well, you would have been making bows for bows and arrows since you were children, so that wouldn't be a difficult technology. Summer is a coming in, loudly sing cuckoo. Grow its head and blow its bed and strip the wood and sing cuckoo. Yalla bletted after lumno after carby coo. Bullock starty, bookie varty, merrily sing cuckoo. Cuckoo, cuckoo, who else against the cuckoo? The swick the afternoon.
Beautiful. Well done. I love it.
One more?
Yes, please.
Okay. These two are, I can show you them afterwards. They're okay. But,
What's that big thing there?
exactly this one. So, this is the oldest continuous use instrument in Europe. It's been used for 1,000 years without a break.
Really?
It goes back to an invention in a monastery in what was to become North Germany, Saxony. And here they made a large instrument which was called an organistrum. And this was so big because it had to imitate a man's voice, because it was to do with helping the monks to sing. So it had nice big strings. And, sorry, just adjusting the strap, there we go. But it was so big it had to have two players. One player turned the handle. And the other player, what that does, by the way, is turns a wooden wheel, and that's my bow. So I still have a bridge and strings. There's my bridge and there's the strings. But instead of a bow, I have a wheel. And then the other player would move these. These are a keyboard with like little wooden fingers on them. And so they touch the string to change the length. And because I have a keyboard and a wheel, I can have two strings playing the melody, so I get more for my money.
Oh yes, of course.
So in the monastery, it was probably just one string in the monastery. But it would have sounded something like this. Gloria in excelsis Deo, etc.
Fantastic.
Then
I love it.
this spread right across Europe fairly rapidly, and it was soon realised that it's cheaper to have one musician than two.
Yes.
So they
of
made it
course.
smaller, and this smaller version was called a symphony. And in a symphony, they found that you can add strings to the wheel. Put the belt on, there we go. This instrument was called a symphony, which is a Greek word that just means many voices, symphony orchestra.
It's very powerful, isn't it?
I'm just going to, sorry. But it's even cheaper to have one musician than three. And the evidence for this is from a painting by a mad Dutchman called Hieronymus Bosch,
Of course.
who painted around 1490 the Gardens of Earthly Delight.
Yes.
And he regarded music, being a very Christian man, as the beginnings of the road to hell. So he put instruments in hell. So that's what that is.
That's
And he thought that music encouraged debauchery and dance and drinking. And for the first time it showed a new device, this one. And what that does is it controls a string which goes across a loose piece of wood or bridge. And when it's adjusted properly, when I jerk the handle, now we have rhythm. So we have rhythm, melody and harmony in one instrument. So it's no wonder this has lasted for 1,000 years
Yeah,
without a break.
absolutely. Just
It also-
remind me, what is it called again, this one?
Oh, I didn't say that, did I? This is called a hurdy-gurdy.
Oh,
But as we're in
right.
Scotland, it's a hurdy-gurdy.
Of course.
In fact, there's so many names for this instrument. Here's a list of names from all around the world,
Oh.
all around Europe.
Fantastic, thank you. That is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
So,
And do you
do you
have...
want a tune?
Yes, please.
So we're going to do another brawl, and this is the horses' brawl. So brawls were French influence up until about 1540, and then the influence spread to Italy, and we got pavans and galliards and other sorts of dances from southern Europe. Sorry, I'm struggling with this one today. No, it's gone. Sorry, that's all you're going to get off this
That's
one today.
absolutely fine. You've done a marvellous job, really. A marvellous job.
These are my
Thank
second
you.
instruments because I'm at Stirling Castle tomorrow and I've got another
Thank you.
journey there.
Now, are these all yours? Part of your amazing collection?
About 100 instruments in a room.
Have you?
Yeah. I have 3 different sorts of pianos.
Are you a music scholar?
No, well, yeah, in the sense that that's what I do. I read
Yeah.
about it. I've written 400 plus pieces that no one's interested in.
I'm sure
No, they're not.
lots
They're
of
not.
people
no,
are.
they're not. There's no money in it. Music now is just about getting enough people through the door to keep your orchestra alive. So
That's
They're
it.
not going to play. They're not going to play me, who no one's ever heard of. They're going to play Beethoven and Mozart.
What do you think about AI in music?
What do I think? I think it at the moment it's pretty limited. I am in contact with someone who does have an AI program, and he sort of says, "Oh, we can do this, this, and this." The main problem is that, for me, is that AI it's going to always be generic until you actually get true intelligence, because, and I don't mean intelligence in terms of really understanding what you're doing, because sometimes when I'm writing music, it's not about understanding what I'm doing, it's letting it go and just going with, oh, I'll just try that note. It looks completely wrong, it doesn't obey the rules, but I'm going to put that note there and see what happens.
100%, yeah.
And then you play it, and then you make an informed judgment on your own history of music, mine going back 50 years.
Yeah.
And you can't really imitate that yet with AI.
No.
So I have a friend who has perfect recall and perfect pitch, and I found all his compositions were essentially rehashes of other composers. He couldn't do the originality bit,
Yeah.
because he could instantly hear what he wrote down.
Yeah, of course.
And it instantly fitted into a style or a pattern, or he
Yeah.
had to choose a pattern to fit it into.
Is there anything that mirrors AI from history, do you think? I mean, were they copyists
What do you
back?
mean by AI? Do you see?
Well, exactly what you're talking about.
Well,
So basically, pilfering other people's works.
We did that all the time. I mean, the whole factor of instruments and the whole factor, writing music, doing art, writing poetry, is that you're building on the foundations of other people.
Absolutely, yeah, of
And
course.
unless you have those foundations, those restrictions, you can't really do something interesting.
Yeah.
If you have too much freedom, it all goes, because you don't know where to go. You've got too many possibilities.
Were there copyists in history?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course there were. And
Like with art as well,
yeah,
wasn't there?
particularly with art.
Yeah,
Art is fraught with people who are very good at copying a Turner or a Constable or something.
Yeah,
so on.
of course.
Plus, within their own studios, they had pupils who could do the style of their art,
absolutely.
of their boss. And when the boss dies, and there's half a dozen paintings that have been finished, they're going to finish them because they're worth a whack of money.
Yeah.
And they're worth more because he's just died, so there aren't going to be any more. But the same thing goes for composition. So I recently did a a concert of music by Thomas Erskine, the Earl of Kelly Castle. And he was really the last person to do classical music in Scotland. And he did it because he had a passion for the violin. And also his dad got put in prison because he chose the wrong side during the Jacobites, which allowed young Thomas to sell half the land and disappear to Germany for 4 years and spend most of it on drinking and eating. But he came back with all these bells and whistles about what they were doing over there. So things that you might have heard of, like the Mannheim rocket, where the orchestra would start with a and off you go.
Yeah.
So he had all these bells and whistles that he put into his music, but he had no originality. So his music was rich in all the things that you could do with it, but they were all in the wrong place, or they were too much of the same thing.
Yeah.
So he didn't have the balance.
Yeah.
But he was wealthy enough to put on the last classical concerts in Edinburgh up until about 1780 when he died. He and a friend. Plus he used to buy all the booze, so everyone used to turn up.
Of course.
But after he died, the next person that came along, big cultural influence, of course, was Robert Burns. And the whole of Scotland went crazy for the folk culture, their sort of Scottish-born culture. But there was a classical culture in Scotland, and there was a Renaissance culture in Scotland. They just burnt it all. Like St Giles, they had 500 years of St Giles's.
You're talking about in Edinburgh, yeah? Yeah.
Sorry, it's St Giles Cathedral.
Yeah, of course.
And the same thing for St Andrews. They burnt these libraries because they thought they were papist.
That's
they burnt
it, yeah.
all the music. So very few survives. In fact, I have a book over here of all the keyboard music that survived in Scotland. This is what I play in Stirling Castle because I have one of my small harpsichords there.
Do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'll be there tomorrow and the next